And now for our next speaker, Katie. She's leading customer success at Bitrise at the minute, but she also has 15 years of experience in leading customer success teams in general. She's also leading strategies that are designed to increase customer satisfaction, retention, and growth rates. Katie, the stage is yours.
Hello, and thank you for having me. I'm going to start off just telling you a little bit about who I am. Thank you for the introduction, but my name is Kenney, and I'm currently the VP of Customer Experience at Bitrise. I've seen a couple Bitrise folks here today in passing, so hi to all of you that I haven't had a chance to speak with, too. A little bit about me on a personal level. I am from Boston, so I am suffering from massive jet lag right now. I flew in yesterday and got here about 2 o'clock. And I live in Boston with my family, my husband and my 2 children. They are 5.5 and 4. We're very efficient in my family, and got 2 out really quick. And I have, as I mentioned, spent about 15 years working in customer experience. The beginning of my career, I actually worked in sales, did a little stint in product management, and then ended up in customer experience. And my last job I was actually at for almost 10 years, and a lot of this will relate to some of the journey there and my early experience in leadership, and a little bit more about how I became the leader that I am today, and a lot of the traits that I brought along and how I acquired those over time. But what I've really learned over this time is that happy employees make happy customers. Right? So it all starts with the people. Our most important resource, I actually heard the last speaker say this too, the most important resource that we have is our people, and it's what actually creates a lot of the business value and drives a lot of the success of any organization. Ooh, I'm getting feedback, sorry. So today I wanted to chat a little bit about why I believe that empathy is a vital leadership competency. So that's what we'll be talking about here today. And I wanted to start this off with a little bit of a lighter note. So anyone that's seen the news lately or follows anything tech has seen this man's face everywhere. And Elon Musk here is a perfect example of what is not an empathetic leader. And so somebody at Bitrise actually recently posted this site that you can go on to. It's actually linked in the presentation. I can send it out after in the Slack. But of who said it, Musk or Burns? And I thought it was absolutely hilarious. So I'm going to pull a couple of these out, and you guys can vote here. But for those of you that I think most people know who both of these individuals are. So the first one, if there was a way I could not eat so I could work more, I would not eat. Who thinks that this was Musk? Okay. Who thinks that this was Burns? Okay. Sad fact. It was not a TV show. It was actually Elon Musk who believes that work is more important than basic human needs. The second one, family, religion, friendship. These are 3 demons you must slay if you wish to succeed in business. Who believes this is Elon Musk? And who thinks that this is Burns? Okay, you Burns folks are right. Thankfully, this one was made up in a television show and not on in real life. And I'll leave you with one more. I would tell those people they will get to see their families a lot when we go bankrupt. Elon Musk? Okay. Burns? Okay, you guys were right here with Elon Musk. You know, it's funny, you read a lot about Elon Musk. There's stories out there that he makes up, that he told people that being at the birth of their child is not as important as being at work and stuff like that. And while he does have a core empathy for mankind, he kind of lacks it in the individual leadership sense of the companies that he works for. And you've seen that a lot in the news and what's going on at Twitter and stuff. But if that's not leading with empathy, what is? So in my opinion, empathy is an often overlooked superpower. It's about others. It's about inspiring folks to take action, to be able to go above their capabilities, and leading them in a direction that is both compelling and inspiring. It's showing compassion for other people's views, making sure that you're actually listening and incorporating views back into decisions that are made. It is not sympathy, right? A lot of people equate empathy and sympathy as the same thing. You can have sympathy for people in a lot of everybody. Sympathy is a trait of people, right? It's something that happens innately. We feel sympathy if somebody's parents have issues or if somebody's having a life balance issue. But empathy is actually going above and understanding the needs of the others and being aware and considerate of their feelings and their views when you're making decisions as a leader. I think what's really important here too is that you don't have to agree with everything, right? It's not about conforming to other people or rolling over at everybody else's requests, but it's about understanding their point of view and being willing to appreciate it and incorporate their thoughts back into your decisions. It's putting yourself in their shoes and really trying to understand what they're going through and what's compelling them to have their views and their decisions. I think a lot of people, and you'll see this later in a couple of the other slides and some of the stats that I have here, a lot of people, at times it's been overlooked as a trait of a leader. And it's seen sometimes as weak or a soft approach. But it can actually drive very significant business results if you are empathetic with your employees. I'll go into it a little bit more in some slides there, but creating a positive work environment where people feel valued, where they feel appreciated, where they feel listened to, can really help motivate employees to be more productive and create a lasting business impact. So what are some of these traits of empathetic leaders, of leaders that are not like Elon Musk? One, you put the focus on understanding and connecting with others. So it's about relationships, right? From customer success to internal, it's all about building relationships and learning people. It's seeing those situations from other people's perspectives and really understanding what their decisions are and considering their needs when you're making your decisions. Is leaving people feeling safe and cared for. I think psychological safety is a big hot topic out in the market right now, and really understanding and making sure that people feel that connection and feel trusted and that you trust the individuals that are working with you. And it's contributing to positive relationships at work and creating positive cultures within organizations. And why does all this matter? It's actually kind of a chain reaction, right? Happy employees that feel trusted, that feel empowered, are highly productive, right? They become more productive within the organization, they're able to engage more, they're able to be inspired more, to bring more thought leadership forward, which will create better services and products for the organization. On top of that, when you have better products and organizations, you have better customer satisfaction, which in my organization is what we're always striving for. Customer satisfaction leads to customer loyalty, less churn, more increase in NRR and growth within the organization, which in the end results to profits for the organization. So it all starts with happy employees lead to better profits. So how do we do some of this? I wanted to start with a little bit of a story about some of the leaders that I've incorporated over my time. I've had lots of different leaders over my journey, and some I liked their styles, some I could learn from, some I learned things I didn't want to incorporate in my leadership style. So I'm going to talk about 3 different leaders that I've had over my journey. The first one is Nick. First off, these names are not real. I totally redacted the names just in case here, but Nick here was everybody's buddy, right? We all know that person, the person that's chummy all the time, probably has no direction or giving you clear guidance on what you're looking to achieve. I never really knew what was expected of me with Nick. I did my job. I thought I did my job well, but I never felt like I was excelling in my job because I didn't know what was expected of me. I just knew that I had to be Nick's buddy. Then there was Claire. So Claire was a bit of a control freak. She led with authority, and when she was brought into the organization, I was actually really excited. I was like, that's a leader right there, right? She's strong, she's competent, she's going to get shit done. But Claire was a control freak, and her issues always became my issues, right? So 10 o'clock at night, I'd get a text, I need something done for 8 a.m. in the morning. Like, great. And she never could plan ahead, and she was always what I would call maybe a chaos freak too, right? Everything was in chaos, and everything was last minute, and so I struggled with Claire, and a lot of ways. One, in this picture depicts really well, is she was never present. We would go into my one-on-ones, she'd either be texting on her phone, on her computer, doing things. I never felt like she valued my opinion or my input. So then came along Angie. And Angie was an empathetic leader who I feel like I have taken a lot of her traits and incorporated them into the leader that I want to be. And Angie came in, and actually this is a funny story, but it was probably about a month after she started, and I was sitting on my couch. It's about, 9 or 10, and I get a text from Angie. And I'm like, oh, shit, here we go. So I get up, get my laptop, get ready to do work, open my text, and she's like, oh my God, are you watching Game of Thrones? And I knew in that moment that she had planned ahead. She'd asked me for everything I needed. I knew what was expected of me. And her reaching out to me in that moment had nothing to do with work. She just knew that I liked Game of Thrones and she was watching it too. And it was something that we could relate over. And over time, I really grew to love the traits that Angie brought to the table. I keep wanting to say her real name. I'm gonna slip. And so I thought I'd tell you a little bit about some of the traits and some of the things that I really liked about Angie. First of all, she was very approachable. I never felt that I had to hide anything from her or that I couldn't go to her with any issue. Within the first couple months that Angie was my leader, we had a project go completely off the rails. And I had to go to her and tell her that things were gonna be not just a little bit over budget, but pretty drastically over budget. And her approach was very calm. She came at it asking a lot of questions. How can we make things better? What can we do? What would you do in these situations? And she was very collaborative and approachable in any situation that I was ever put on with her. She was extremely caring. In life, we build relationships with people. And the funny thing is with Nick and Claire, I also had great relationships. I liked them as people. They were really great people. In fact, they came to my wedding. I actually really liked them as individuals. They just didn't inspire me or lead me in the way that I needed to be approached in order to be my most efficient and effective in my role. But Angie here was very caring. She always led with her heart and would bring in a lot of personal stories and explain things to me in a very thoughtful manner. When I decided to leave my last company and called Angie, I was in tears. I just loved her and didn't want to leave her. And I think that's a true thought of a good leader within an organization, is when you actually feel like tenure and loyalty to this individual, and she made me feel that. She was very communicative. I knew exactly where I stood with her on any given situation and any given project. She was always making sure that she kept me up to date on the things that were going on. She was flexible. I think this is another one. We talk a lot right now about work-life balance and stuff, and COVID has made this 80 times more. It's not really work-life balance, it's more like work-life integration, right? How things get done. And when I had my first child, she was my boss. And she was very flexible throughout the whole thing, and making sure that I was able to come back to work in a meaningful manner and able to separate and get my job done and be effective. She also was very flexible with her thoughts, right? So anytime I went to her and disagreed with something or a decision that was made or wanted to have input, she was very flexible about listening and understanding my needs and my ideas and incorporating that back into her decision making too. And she was empowering. And I think these two kind of go together, which was empowering and autonomous, but she gave me enough leeway to go and learn and be better and to get stuff done, and she trusted me fully. And she allowed me to run my organization autonomously with her support when I needed it, and very much lifted me up and elevated me as a leader within the organization too. It wasn't about, when I worked with Claire, it was always about elevating Claire. And when I worked with Angie, it was about elevating me, which elevated Claire, which I really appreciated. So what does that mean for business, right? So now Angie's come in, she's created a happy employee. What does that mean for the bottom line of the business, and why is this important? Empathy and caring and creating these relationships creates a culture of trust. So psychological safety, we hear this a lot right now, right? And how people are feeling. And especially in the economy that we're in right now, people's psychological safety is diminishing. People don't feel as safe at work. People don't feel as safe within their role. But this empathy and this ability to create a relationship and have honest conversations and understanding between people allows people to feel safe, right? You can feel safe with your failures. You can feel safe with your role. And you can come when there's issues, right? When you don't feel like you're going to get blamed for things or there's going to be an issue. And employees tend to trust their leaders more if you come with a caring relationship. And it's especially important in times like what we've run into over the past 2 years, where there's times of stress or fear or unrest. That culture of trust really allows people to be at their best. In any organization, and I know every organization to some degree struggles with the communication aspects, right? Like, how do you get the flow of communication? I work in a global company right now. We're mostly remote. We're totally remote. We have an office in Budapest, but there's people, everywhere all over the world, so we have to make sure that we're fostering this communication. And when you have relationships and you have the trust built within those, the communication flows way faster, more fluid. You can reach out to any individual, and if you have the relationship with them, you can provide constructive feedback. And by providing that feedback, all boats rise and everybody gets a little bit better. Innovation is also inspired, right? So when people feel that they're in a trustworthy environment and they feel cared for, they're much more likely to come forward with new ideas or to stick their neck out on the line a little bit and to give an idea. They're not afraid to bring new things to the table. And if you have this caring, fostering environment where people feel psychological safety, communication is much more effective, constant, and kind. And one that's really important to me, and especially right now in the market, is it creates loyalty and tenure. So I have to say, Claire was my boss, again, Claire, great person, but as a boss was not great for me. I actually resigned from my position. I went to the HR team, told them that actually HR took me to lunch because they could tell that I was getting a little restless in my thing, and I told them that I was looking for other roles, and they're like, you got to wait it out. Just wait it out and see how you feel. There's some changes coming. And so in came Angie, and I actually stayed at that organization for another 3.5 years, just because of good leadership, right? So a lot of times you'll hear people don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad bosses. A lot of that's really true, right? Like, a lot of your role and how happy you are within an organization is the leadership that's inspiring you and that's coaching you and making you a more productive member of the team. And so the people that you're coaching feel the same way. And so that's not to say that people don't leave jobs, bad jobs too, right? Like, every reason's different. There's going to be a great leader and a bad fit. There's going to be a lot of other reasons, but it's much harder to leave an organization when you're passionate about the leadership. It also creates creates camaraderie between people, right? When there's like this caring, passionate relationship within the organization, employees feel part of something bigger, and they're able to work together to achieve the same goals better. One other thing is you're able to, if you have that relationship and you have that pulse on people, you're able to recognize signs of burnout and stress and overwork in people a lot easier. So you're able to get out ahead of some of the problems that people are facing. And engaged employees are one of your best recruitment tools. I think for all of us right now, especially 6 months ago when it was a really hot market, one of the best ways to get the word out there was people sharing it on LinkedIn, people sharing their posts, people recruiting from their network, and engaged employees tend to be your best recruitment tool within any organization. And this one's really important. You get higher productivity out of people, right? So in a safe, trusting, supportive environment, this makes it sound like like you're sitting on a couch talking, but not at all what it's meant to be. But in a safe, trusting, and supportive atmosphere, employees are enabled to really focus on their duties, to be more inspired, to execute what they're there for. And when you're seeing stuff from their perspective, you can better understand what motivates people, right? And so if you know people's motivations, you can play into that a lot more and be able to make sure that you're getting the most from your employees. And when they have the optimism and trust, they ultimately just have better performance. And you'll see some stats on this in just a second. And you get happier and healthier employees. And again, happier and healthier employees means happier and healthier customers. When stress levels are significantly lower within companies where there's empathetic leadership, where people have caring relationships, and they get inspired and get excited to go to work every day. So here's a couple stats, and from some research studies that have been done on leading with empathy or having a humanistic approach to your leadership style. Catalyst was the first study here. They found that people were 4.7 times more likely to be innovative within their role if it was 61% of employees to 13% of employees when they felt that they had an empathetic, humanistic leader. That same study found that it increased inclusivity in a company. I know DE&I is a big thing. It's really hard to hire and ensure that you have an inclusive environment, but creating an inclusive environment creates better opportunities for these things. And 50% of people who had empathetic leaders felt that their workplace was more inclusive compared to only 17% of those with less empathetic in leadership. Again, work-life balance or work-life integration, whatever you want to call it here, it's definitely a different term in modern times. But 86% felt that they were able to navigate the demands of their work and life better compared to only 60% of those when they perceived that they did not have an empathetic leader. Harvard Business Review also did a couple studies on this and found, again, that it increases the bottom line. So that chain reaction that we talked about earlier, it increases the bottom line, where the top 10 most empathetic companies outperformed the bottom 10 by at least 50% in productivities, earnings, and growth. And Google themselves have done studies. If you've ever read about Project Aristotle, it was to determine what creates high-performing, high-functioning teams within an organization. And what they found was the secret sauce was that it wasn't hiring the most innovative, knowledgeable people. It was the empathy and the teamwork and the relationships and the collaborations that those teams were able to make that made them more collaborative and accomplished. And then Gartner, too, has done studies and found that humanistic relationship, their study was on it being the next evolution in leadership. They found that 37% point increase in engagement within people, within organizations, for people who had a humanistic leader versus people who said that they did not consider their leader to be humanistic. And highly engaged employees, on average, they found to improve their team's performance by up to 27%. In that same Gartner study, they also found that 29% of leaders are effective at humanistic leadership. So that's the different part. So we know the benefits of it. We've talked about some of the things that the bottom line and increasing employee engagement and productivity, but only 1 in 4 employees feel that their leader has a humanistic approach or that comes forward with a caring, thoughtful approach. So the big question is are empathetic leaders born or are they made? I'm going to start off with just saying that I was not always an empathetic leader. Prior to having Angie as my boss, I think I exhibited traits a little bit more like Claire. I was learning from Claire. I thought that's what it was. I thought strong leadership, determined, somebody who can make decisions very fast and thoughtful, or not as thoughtful, was the way to go, right? You got to be authoritative, you got to make decisions, you got to do all this stuff. And so I would say it's a little bit of both, right? It's definitely a trait. There's this genetic predisposition in people to be either more empathetic or less empathetic. But that's also a skill that can be learned. There's a lot of different ways that people can be active listeners and can make sure that they're checking in with employees and doing a lot of things. You can be trained to be more empathetic and learned behavior to be mindful of. So here's a little about like some of the things that I've changed and how I choose to lead my team to make it a little bit more engaging and caring environment. Be authentic, right? One of the things that I always think about is focus on the who, then on the what. So, if your goal is to increase ARR by X% or to increase your releases shorten your releases by X number of days, the only way you're going to get there is with the people. And the who's going to get you there. Or if you're trying to increase for us, your NPS response rates or something like that, the who is the customer and the people, right? The people that are working with them. So focus on the who, then the what. And act with purpose And make sure that you're enabling other people to bring their ideas, give them forums to bring that thought leadership forward and to be able to be inspired. Try to build relationships that are built on trust and transparency. Alan was here earlier. He was giving a talk, but he did a thought leadership thing with the leadership team at Bitrise a while ago. And one of the things that we talked about is trust and two types of people. And I always think about this. There are people who innately trust and people that you have to earn their trust. I'm an innate trust giver, so I will give you my trust. But then if you burn me, you're probably never going to get it back. And then there's people who earn your trust over time, right? Like they don't give their trust immediately, but you have to earn it over time. And then once you're in that inner circle and you've earned their trust, you're pretty much there for life. And so I think about that a lot and how to build trust within a team and how to inspire both those types of individuals and think about how I build trust with some people or how I make sure that I keep trust with other people. And really important is that you don't always have to conform to all these ideas, right? So make sure that people are able to bring their ideas, they're able to give their thoughts, but in the end, you have to listen, you have to understand, but you don't have to always. Healthy debate is always a good way to come to a better solution. Make sure that you can understand your team, right? So teams are made up of individuals, not just people who are place fillers to get the job done. So anything that you can do to understand and build relationships with the team, even little things. And it's not just your team, right? It's the entire company. One of my favorite things that we do at Bitrise is donuts. It's 20 minutes in my week that I get to spend getting to know somebody else within the organization, and it builds those relationships where, 2 months later, I'm like, oh, I really need help with X, Y, and Z, and I remember somebody that I had a donut with that does that role. Know about the types of people that you're working with. Are they task-oriented? Are they people-oriented? Are they outgoing? Are they introverted? Are they feelings-oriented, fact-oriented? Like, knowing this about the people will make you understand how to motivate them better. And just make sure that you can understand a perspective that may be vastly different than your own. It doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything, but just understanding and listening and actively listening when people are having these conversations is really important. And be present. So be mindful and actively listen. That's what we were just talking about. Don't be texting when somebody is in a one-on-one and typing. And it's so hard. This is actually, being present is probably the one that I struggle with the hardest, and something that I have to work on as an individual constantly, is making sure that I'm not multitasking. It's like we're on Zoom and having a conversation, just making sure that I can set stuff aside and give people the presence that they deserve. And make sure that I'm asking questions and understanding how to support folks. And the reason that this one's really hard for me is this one: just listen. I go into solving mode all the time, right? But a lot of the times people don't need me to solve something. They need me to listen and understand the issue, give them feedback, ask questions that will help identify those obstacles, reinforce the communications, and let them figure out the solution for what they need to achieve. And then the other thing that we really try to do is recognize the successes in our team, making sure that people feel appreciated, that they feel respected, that they feel trusted. When people are made aware of the positive impacts that they have, and when that is something that you talk about, they want more of that, and obviously will perform better. And I try to make sure that I don't do blanket statements, so not, hey, great job, team, but more, hey, great job, Joe, you did a really great job with X, Y, and Z, so that people feel that they feel appreciated and understood and recognized. And I guess the last one is just be vulnerable, right? So none of us have this shit figured out, right? Like, there's so much things being thrown at us at any given at any time. So ask for feedback from the team. Share your experiences. Like, I think storytelling is a great way and your experiences and bringing those forward in your leadership is a great way to talk to the team. And that vulnerability will only strengthen the relationships and make people feel a little bit more comfortable coming to you with issues. And then, like I said, ask for feedback. So in the end, people will ultimately remember how much you care about them and not the last thing you did for them. I think that's general in life, not just in business, but in life. People remember how you made them feel. I always choose to be mindful of the impact that I have on others. And that's where we end.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
There's a little change. I have been told my back looks horrible, so I'll try to focus on that screen in front of me, and we'll try asking questions like that. And we have a lot, 24. Okay. How can you proceed as an empathetic leader if your team is introvert a lot?
It's always an interesting question, and I actually, especially within my support team and stuff, it tends to be a little bit more introverted than my CSM team, which is just all extroverts. And so it's about knowing the team and understanding the team and finding opportunities for people to bring forward ideas and to have conversations. A lot of that, I feel, starts in the one-to-one, like building that relationship one-to-one. And once you have that relationship one-to-one, it's bringing it into the entire team and building out the culture of the team. So I really like to try to establish those one-on-one relationships. You learn about them, you learn how to do stuff, and you can pull people in when you know them, right? Once you understand them on a personal level, when you're in a group setting, you can always be like, oh, John, the other day you were telling me about X, Y, and Z. Can you do that? So I think you don't have to be extroverted to be empathetic, right? Or to have a team that is empathetic. It's definitely a lot easier to get people to engage and have conversations, but it doesn't mean that the outcome has to be any different based on the team.
Thank you. How can you suggest your boss to change his or her style as an empathetic leader?
You gotta, one of the most important ways that anybody's gonna change is to provide feedback, right? And giving feedback is also, it does not come naturally to me, or didn't come naturally to me. It's definitely something that I've grown that muscle over time. But I think one of the best things is the honesty and oftentimes telling your boss what you need, right? Like, I need you to understand this. I just need you to listen for a minute. We actually, Meffy's here somewhere, and he was in this course with me. We actually just did the SLT2 course. Is that what it was called? And it was a management training course that we just did at Bitrise. And one of the things that I found really interesting is how you can adapt your leadership style to the individual's needs, and talking a lot more about that and stuff. And one of the biggest things that we learned there, and I would highly suggest that anybody go read some of this stuff online and stuff, is how to adapt your needs to somebody's leadership style too. So making sure that you can stop and say, I need this from you right now, of your manager too, not just your manager telling you what they need from you, but you being able to give direct feedback from your manager on what you need from them.
Thank you. How can an empathetic leader know their limits in terms of their employees' personal boundaries? For example, separating work life from personal life.
It is funny. I think it's reading your audience for the most part, right? There are some people who are going to tell you every detail about their life, right? You get into a conversation, and the first thing I say is, how was your weekend, right? If I'm meeting with somebody. And some people will say, good. Great, that's going to give me a lot to work with. And then there are people that will tell me every detail about their weekends, and I'm like, okay, didn't need to know that your cat was sick, but maybe I did, right? Maybe that's going to impact their life and their work for the next thing. So I think that you let the employee set the boundaries, right? They're gonna give as much as they want. They're gonna take as much as they want, and I wouldn't pry, right? There are some people that are very personal that want better separation between work and life. And in that case, you just get to know the individual. You get to know what motivates them. You might not know their son's name or their daughter's name or anything like that, but you'll be able to establish a relationship, and a relationship built on the needs of the individual.
Sorry for almost laughing, but I already saw the next question. How can you explain the very good business results of Musk's companies? Okay.
Yeah, I know, right? I actually was thinking about this a lot when we were going through some of this stuff, but I don't think that empathetic leadership is the only outcome, and it doesn't mean that there aren't other empathetic leaders within the organizations that Musk runs, right? Musk does run very solid companies. I mean, I don't know if I'd call Twitter solid right now. They're definitely having some issues. And I don't think that he's always the same and has the same presence within any organization either, right? Like, he's a figure within the organization, but right now he's tearing apart and doing his, actually engaged at Twitter. But, if you look at SpaceX or Tesla or anything, they are great organizations, and they do have a lot of other leadership that are running those organizations. And I think even Elon Musk's brother, I was reading something about this too, he says that he has massive empathy for mankind, right? Like he's worried about solving this problem for mankind. He just lacks it on an individual level for other people. So he does have a sense of empathy. It's just at a different level and a different emotional well-being. So I don't know how you explain the success of it. I think it comes down to hiring the right people too.
I guess so. And on that note, please print out the latest piece of code you committed and bring it to the stage. Okay, a member of my team abuses my empathy and flexibility without sufficient performance. That has an impact on team morale. Oops, it's jumping. On team morale. Any advice on handling such a scenario?
I think having relationships with your individuals and having performance conversations should go hand in hand, because if you can be honest with your folks and you've built a relationship, you should be able to have a relationship on trust and an honest, open relationship. And so one of the things that I would say is have those conversations early. Make sure that you're identifying like where people are abusing your empathy. I wouldn't say it's empathy, right? Like they're not abusing your empathy, they're abusing the system in a way if they're taking advantage and taking stuff, and they're not taking responsibility and control for their own self in those situations. And I think that you need to have an honest conversation with them about expectations and level setting, and make sure that they know what is expected of them and what's okay and what's not okay, because just because you have a relationship with somebody does not mean they get to walk all over you. It actually means that you should be able to set better boundaries and be able to have better conversations and more trustful stuff.
And the next question is a nice follow-up, I think, to this. So how would you approach an underperforming team member who uses family issues as an excuse for a longer period of time?
It's a really hard one, because you never know what's actually happening. And it could be, right? Like you never know what's happening. And I mean, you know, because you're having conversations, and you have to believe that they're truthful and trustworthy. But I think, again, it comes down to setting expectations, and are people meeting? Is this an extenuating circumstance, right? Like, is this like somebody is sick, like their kids got a cold, or is it like they have a family member that's in hospice, right? Like there's like two different levels of what's going on there. And I think empathy and creating relationships, again, does not give people an excuse to underperform. It should actually do the opposite and give you the ability to have conversations about performance. So I would say have the conversation. Don't ignore it. Don't like push it under a rug if people are underperforming or something like this. I think the best way to go about it is say, hey, listen, like, I noticed that you've had a lot of family issues going on and everything. Is there something this is starting to impact your role, right? And what can we do to make sure that you're still hitting the performance expectations that I've set forward for you?
Thank you. As an empathetic leader, what's your role during layoffs? We currently see at a big tech. Yeah.
Well, honestly, and I think people know this, we had a small reduction in staff at Bitrise. And it mostly came out of the sales organization and the marketing organization back in September. And it's funny, like my role in it, my team was actually not heavily impacted by the changes, but my role in it was to be very empathetic. I had a lot of people from other teams that know me, that reached out, that put time on my calendar, that wanted to talk about their psychological safety, how they were feeling. So you become a safe harbor in a lot of that stuff, right? You become the person that people feel like they can trust, that they can have a conversation with, that they can be honest with, that they can lean on to understand what's going on. And I think that trickled through to the follow-on when people were reaching out. Mostly it's like the psychological safety thing, like reaching out, putting time on my calendar, having it. So I would say you become the safe harbor. You become a safe place for people to go to in a situation like that. And so it's also a great place to be, like when you feel that people can lean on you during those times too.
Thank you. Again, we have a follow-up. As a manager, direct relationship, trust, psychological safety is a long process. How do I achieve this when there is a huge fluctuation in today's world? Sorry.
I'm not sure if I understand the full extent of what the question is here. I definitely agree that trust and well, it depends. Like, if it's a long journey or not, because like I said, people can innately trust you or they can earn your trust, and in an earned trust, sometimes it is a longer road to get there. But I think that there are a lot of fluctuations, there's a lot of change that's going on in the economy, but kind of have to separate the two too. How do people feel at work? How are they feeling about the environment that you're collecting for them? How can you ensure that people feel included, that they feel inspired, and that they feel productive, right? I think that's one of the things that struggles is productivity and engagement during times, hard times, and when people don't feel psychological safety, so making sure that people feel a little bit more included in the process.
Thank you. Do you have any tricks or practices to build empathic leadership style with employees working 100% remote or abroad?
Yeah, the remote thing is interesting, and actually Bitrise, I'm in Boston, so I am completely remote. My whole team's remote. I have people from Asia Pacific all the way to the West Coast, so we span a very global team within customer success. A lot of it is that being present, right? Being available, making sure that you make time to talk to people. I never cancel my one-on-ones. I move them sometimes, right? Like we have to be flexible, we have to understand stuff, but I don't cancel them. I think it's really important to keep consistency and make sure that you're checking in with your individuals, knowing how they're feeling. One of the things I always ask people on my one-on-ones is, how are you feeling? I think that question is loaded, and it can bring personal things, it can bring work things, it can bring a lot of different answers to that stuff, to their answer, but it also lets me know what's going on in their life. So I think it's okay just to ask people, how are you feeling? In my leadership meeting every week, people rate themselves, right? Like we ask them how they're feeling and why. And I think it brings a lot to the table in terms of understanding, like, are there things that are impacting people from the outside? Are there things that are bugging people that they haven't brought to the table, right? Like it just, until you ask the question, sometimes you won't get the answer. And then the other thing I would say is those donuts that I mentioned before. If you don't have something like that, like having ad hoc ways to get to know other people across the organization, because you're a leader in an organization, right? You're not a leader for just a team. You have to get to know people outside your bubble as well. And so those donuts are a great way. We also do culture building in the customer success team. So once a month we have like a game day. I know it sounds silly, but like that little bit of time, that like hour a month, goes a long way for people to build relationships and to have like non-work specific talks. Because right now when you get on a Zoom, you don't get that water cooler talk, right? Like you don't get that time when you're just sitting making a coffee and you're asking somebody how their day is. So that little bit of time that we set aside to build as a team goes a long way. And then if you can get it in your budget, remote, getting together as a team in person, super important. We just did our CX team building in Philadelphia, where we brought everybody globally into Philadelphia for a week, and it was mind-blowing and just a great way for everybody to connect and to bring those relationships forward. And yeah, making time.
Yeah, that goes a long way. What are the traps for an empathetic leader? How can it go wrong?
I would say one of the traps is, I would say maybe twofold. Sometimes empathetic leaders can be seen as weak, right? Emotional, soft. But I think it's really important to stand your ground, right? Just because you care about people does not mean you cannot be opinionated and that you can't be forceful and that you can't make decisions and that you can't. It just means that you're people first or people-centric, right? And I put my people above all when I'm making decisions and when I'm thinking about things. But I think one of the traps can be perception of others. If you don't stand up and make decisions, and you can't, when the time comes down to make authoritative decisions and stuff, you have to still be able to do that. And then the other one I would say for some people is what we've read in here a little bit, and some of the sentiment that's coming through here is, how do you make sure people don't walk all over you, right? Like you still have to, just because you care about somebody doesn't mean you can't say, I care about my kids innately, I say no to them all the time, right? And being able to have those conversations and to be able to have healthy debate and stuff in that decision. Caring does not mean bending over backwards or not saying no. It means understanding people, understanding their opinions, and having healthy debate to come up with the best solution.
Thank you, and maybe one last question. I believe that leaders with a dark triad personality still rule over empathetic leaders. What's your opinion on that? Is it getting better?
I think this dark triad personality is probably your more authoritative Claire that I was talking about a little bit more, and I thought that, right? Like I thought that was going to be the type of leader that I aspired to be, and that was very authoritative and that could come in and be a little bit of a bully. And I actually, and speaking of vulnerability, I had people tell me early in my career that I was intimidating, right? I don't think that anybody would say that about me now. It would be interesting to talk to poll some people at Bitrise, but I think I've softened a lot in my approach. And I think, I don't think they win. I think that they're just louder. And sometimes that's what gets seen, right, is the person that's like screaming the loudest. But like, if you always give the person that's screaming all the attention, you're going to miss out on 90% of the people who are not screaming in the background. And that goes with employees too, right? Like, I just actually overcame a situation within my team where the loudest person was always getting all the attention, and it was creating toxicity on the team. And in the end, we ended up having to change the team up a little bit and do some things there. But like, don't always give, our HR guy says this and I love it, don't always give the crying baby the milk. Everybody needs the milk, right? So I don't know that they're winning out or I guess ruling over, but I think that there's an emerging thing about a humanistic approach within leadership, and you're starting to see it in some of those, like the Gartner survey that I just showed you was a 2022 study that says that it's one of the leading and emerging ways to get productivity and engagement across any organization improved.
Thank you very much, and thanks a lot for coming here today.
Thank you. Thank you.